Welcome to Rise and Conquer US UK, your daily source of unstoppable motivation. Here we build discipline, courage, and focus so you can rise higher and conquer your dreams. There comes a moment in everyone's life when logic stops working, when the plan doesn't make sense, when the effort doesn't match the results, when you've done everything right and still nothing moves. And that's when most people give up, but not you. Because in that moment, when sight fails, faith begins. Faith isn't for when things are clear. Faith is for when everything's falling apart and you still choose to believe. Anyone can trust when life is easy. Anyone can believe when everything goes their way. But real faith is forged in fire. Real faith is built when everything says you can't. And something inside you whispers back, watch me. Faith is not about seeing the path, it's about walking anyway. It's not about having proof, it's about having peace. It's not about having control, it's about having courage. Because faith means walking in the dark with confidence that light is waiting. Fear will always try to stop you before faith starts. Fear will whisper, what if you fail? Faith will answer, what if I fly? Fear says you're not ready. Faith says you're exactly where you need to be. Fear says you can't handle this. Faith says I was built for this. That's the difference. Fear limits you, but faith liberates you. When fear says impossible, faith smiles and says perfect. You see, life will always test your belief before it rewards it. It will take you to the edge to see if you really trust what you say you believe. It will push you into uncertainty, not to break you, but to build your strength in silence. Because faith grows in the dark, not in the light. You don't build faith when things are easy, you build it when you have no answers. When you're tired, lost, and scared, and you still take one more step. That's faith. And that step, that single act of trust, changes everything. When you have faith, you stop chasing control. You stop needing to know how everything will work out. You just show up, you just believe. You just keep moving. Because faith says, even when I can't see it, I know something's happening. You don't see the seed growing underground, but it's still becoming a tree. You don't see the sun behind the clouds, but it's still there. You don't see the purpose in your pain yet, but it's still building you. Faith doesn't need proof. Faith is proof. The strongest people aren't the ones who have it all figured out. They're the ones who walk through confusion with confidence, who keep working when nothing's working, who keep believing when no one believes in them. Faith doesn't always roar. Sometimes it whispers. Sometimes it just says, keep going. And sometimes that's all you need. The truth is, fear will always exist. But you get to decide which voice you listen to. Fear feeds on uncertainty. Faith feeds on vision. Fear waits for results. Faith creates results. Fear freezes. Faith moves. And in the battle between the two, whichever you feed more wins. So if you feed fear, it grows louder. If you feed faith, it grows stronger. Start feeding your faith daily. Faith is a muscle. You don't build it once, you build it every time you trust again. Every time you take a risk. Every time you pray instead of panic. Every time you choose calm over chaos. Every time you believe that there's meaning behind the madness. That's how faith grows, through repetition. Just like discipline, just like strength, faith is practice, not luck. When fear tells you you're alone, faith reminds you you're guided. When fear says you're not enough, faith says you already are. When fear says you're losing, faith whispers you're learning. Because faith doesn't always fix your circumstances, it fixes your perspective. It teaches you how to see beauty in pain, purpose in confusion, progress in patience. You might not understand the why right now. You might not see the full picture yet, but one day, it'll all make sense. You'll realize that what looked like a setback was actually direction. That what looked like an ending was actually a beginning. That what looked like loss was actually alignment. Faith allows you to trust that every delay has purpose. Every detour has direction. Every disappointment has design. You don't need to see the whole staircase. You just need to take the first step. The greatest miracles in life happen when you stop demanding signs. and start walking in silence. When you trust your calling, even when the crowd disappears, when you keep building, even when no one notices, when you keep believing, even when the evidence says it's over. Because faith doesn't follow the visible, it follows the vision. And those who walk by faith always reach places others said were impossible. Faith isn't fantasy, it's focus. It's not blind, it's brave. It's not ignoring reality, it's redefining it. Faith looks fear in the eye and says, you don't control me anymore. Because once you choose faith, fear loses power. You stop asking, what if I fail? And start saying, what if I never try? You stop saying, I'm scared, and start saying, I'm ready. When you choose faith over fear, your energy changes. Your presence changes. You walk different. You speak different. You live different. Because now your confidence doesn't come from conditions. It comes from conviction. You stop reacting to chaos. You start responding with clarity. You stop waiting for the perfect time. You start making time perfect. That's what faith does. It turns ordinary moments into divine movements. You don't have to see how it'll all work out. You just have to trust that it will. You've already survived things that should have broken you. You've already overcome battles others didn't make it through. You've already walked through fire and found your way back. You're proof that faith works. You're proof that the unseen is stronger than the seen. You're proof that the impossible is possible when you refuse to quit. So stop waiting for the sign, you are the sign. Stop waiting for the miracle, you are the miracle. Stop waiting for the light, you are the light. Because faith doesn't just change your situation, it changes you. It builds the version of you who can handle the blessing you've been asking for. It prepares you for the level you're destined for. And when your faith becomes unshakable, your future becomes unstoppable. When fear whispers, you can't. You'll smile and say, I already did. When fear says, it's over, faith will say, it's just beginning. And when fear screams, what if you fall? Faith will whisper, then I'll fly. Because that's what happens when you believe before you see. You start walking in miracles. Choose faith over fear. Trust your steps. Believe even when it's dark. Because one day soon, everything you've been praying for will make sense. And you'll look back at your fear and smile. Because it was faith that carried you through. Walk by faith. Live with courage. Rise and conquer. There's a war that happens inside every person. It's not between you and the world. It's not between you and failure. It's between fear and faith. Every morning when you wake up, the battle begins. Fear whispers, stay where it's safe. Faith says, go where you're called. Fear says, what if you lose? Faith says, what if you win? Fear says, you're not ready. Faith says, you were made for this. This battle never ends. But every day, you get to choose who wins. Fear will always sound logical. It will use reason. It will sound smart. It will give you 10 good excuses why you shouldn't take that step. It will say, you need more time. It will say, you're not like them. It will say, wait until it's perfect. But faith doesn't negotiate. Faith just moves. Faith doesn't wait for permission. It creates proof through action. Because faith is not blind. Faith simply sees further than fear ever could. The reason fear feels so strong is because it speaks in volume. It shouts, it exaggerates, it paints disaster before it even happens. But faith doesn't shout, it whispers. It speaks softly through your heart, your intuition, your gut. And that's why most people miss it, because they listen to the noise instead of the knowing. Faith is quiet. Fear is loud. But silence has more power than sound. When you slow down, breathe, and listen, you'll always hear faith speaking. Fear is obsessed with outcomes. It wants to control how everything unfolds. It wants guarantees. Faith doesn't need guarantees, it only needs direction. Fear wants certainty. Faith creates it because when you trust the process, you don't need to see the whole map, you just need to see the next step. You can't always control where the road leads, but you can always control how you walk it. The truth is, fear is not your enemy, it's your test. Fear shows up every time you're about to grow. Every time you're close to a breakthrough, fear gets louder. That's not a sign to stop, that's a sign to push. Because fear is the signal that you're stepping into new territory. And growth never happens in familiar ground. You'll never reach your destiny if you keep running from discomfort. Faith begins exactly where fear ends. You might think fear means you're weak. It doesn't. Fear means you're human. It means you're awake. It means you're standing at the edge of something bigger than yourself. Courage isn't the absence of fear. It's the decision to move despite it. The most fearless people you know, they still feel fear. They've just learned not to obey it. Because fear can exist, but it doesn't have to be in control. You have to understand fear and faith can't rule you at the same time. Only one can lead. So if fear leads your life, you'll always play small. But if faith leads your life, you'll always expand. Faith doesn't promise easy, but it guarantees purpose. Fear will keep you safe, but it will also keep you stagnant. Faith might take you into storms, but it will teach you how to sail. Fear builds walls. Faith builds wings. And you weren't born to hide behind walls. You were born to fly. Everything you want in life lives on the other side of fear. That's not a cliche, that's truth. Because the door to destiny is always guarded by fear. And only those who choose faith find the courage to walk through it. Fear says, what if it doesn't work? Faith says, what if it changes everything? You'll never know until you take this step. You don't need to eliminate fear, you just need to outvote it. When fear says, you're not good enough, remind yourself, I've already survived worse. When fear says, you'll fail, remind yourself, failure is feedback. When fear says, you'll lose everything, remind yourself, what's meant for me cannot be lost. That's how you shift power. You stop agreeing with fear and start aligning with faith. Faith doesn't always make sense, but it always makes progress. You'll take one small step, and doors you never expected will open. You'll speak one brave word, and people you've never met will hear you. You'll try once more, and this time it'll work. Not because life suddenly got easier, but because your energy changed. Faith changes everything, not just your path, but your perception. When you choose faith, obstacles become opportunities. Delays become divine timing. Failures become feedback. That's how the world starts working for you, not against you. You'll never find peace by controlling everything. You'll find peace when you start trusting everything. The universe doesn't need you to understand, it needs you to believe. It doesn't need you to have proof, it needs you to have patience. Because sometimes what feels like rejection is redirection. Sometimes what feels like loss is liberation. Sometimes what feels like ending is evolution. You're not being punished, you're being positioned. Not buried, planted. Not delayed, developed. Faith sees what fear can't. The battle between fear and faith is constant, but here's the secret. The more you choose faith, the weaker fear becomes. Every time you choose courage over comfort, fear fades. Every time you choose trust over doubt, fear loses ground. Every time you take action instead of waiting, fear dies a little. You can't kill fear in one day, but you can starve it every day by feeding your faith. Until one day, fear doesn't control you anymore. It speaks, but you don't listen. It whispers, but you don't respond. It lives, but it doesn't lead. And that's freedom. Faith gives you that freedom, the freedom to move without needing proof, the freedom to believe without needing validation, the freedom to grow without needing permission. Faith makes you unstoppable because it removes the limits that fear created. Once you believe deeply enough, no one and nothing can stop your momentum. Not failure, not rejection, not doubt, because faith is stronger than all three combined. So the next time you feel fear creeping in, smile, because that's your signal. That's the sign you're close to something powerful. Breathe. Step forward. Move anyway, because faith doesn't need the perfect moment, it creates it. And one day, you'll look back at everything that scared you and realize none of it was stronger than your belief. Your journey won't always make sense, but it will always make you were never meant to walk by sight. You were meant to walk by trust. So keep moving, keep believing, keep choosing faith again and again and again, because when you do, fear loses its voice and destiny starts to speak. Don't let fear win. Walk by faith, trust the unseen, rise and conquer. There will be moments when you'll stand at the edge of uncertainty, and everything inside you will scream, stop. Your mind will list 1,000 reasons why it won't work. Your heart will whisper just one, keep going. And that one whisper, that quiet voice of faith, is all you'll ever need. Because faith doesn't shout. Faith doesn't demand proof. Faith simply says, walk even when you can't see the next step, even when the ground feels weak beneath you, even when the world tells you it's impossible. Walk anyway. Faith isn't about knowing what's next. It's about trusting that whatever's next will be exactly what you need. You may not see the destination yet, but every step you take in faith moves you closer to it. Sometimes progress is invisible. Sometimes miracles are quiet. Sometimes growth happens in the waiting. But just because you can't see it doesn't mean it's not real. You've come too far to go back now. You've fought too many battles to stop before the breakthrough. You've survived too many storms to fear the next cloud. The same strength that brought you here will carry you forward again. Because faith doesn't fail. Faith finishes. One day you'll look back and realize the things that scared you were never meant to stop you. They were meant to shape you. Every delay was protection. Every disappointment was redirection. Every fear you faced became the foundation of your courage. And that's the secret. Faith always wins. Not because life suddenly becomes easy, but because you stop letting fear lead. You'll learn to smile through uncertainty, to walk through silence, to trust the timing of your life even when it doesn't make sense. You'll learn that faith doesn't promise fast results. It promises the right ones. It teaches patience. It builds power. It leads to peace. Because when you walk by faith, you're no longer chasing outcomes. You're following alignment. So keep walking. Keep believing. Keep showing up even when you can't see what's next. Because your story isn't ending, it's unfolding. Your faith isn't failing, it's forming. Your future isn't far, it's waiting for you to take one more step. Don't stop now. Don't look back. You're almost there. The path is yours. The light is near. And as always, faith wins, fear fades. Rise and conquer. This was your daily dose of motivation from Rise and Conquer US UK. Remember, your time is now. Stand tall, stay disciplined, and rise and conquer. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for tomorrow's motivation.